I'm Chef Michael Montgomery from the Culinary School of the Rockies. Today we are going to be utilizing some of these gorgeous little local apples, and we are going to make the classic French Tarte Tatin. It is apple season finally. I wait a long time for these beauties to come in, and what we have here from the western slope of Colorado are two different types of apples. We have some McIntosh and we have some Galas, and these are perfect for a classic Tarte Tatin. Tarte Tatin is basically it's just an upside down apple tart. So we're going to build the tart in a skillet, we're going to finish it in the oven, and we're going to invert it, and that will be our Tarte Tatin. That dessert has a really fun French history. Two sisters in a hotel in France made a mistake and overcooked their apples for an apple pie, decided to put the crust on the top and flip it out. And it was a success, and we still do them to this day. One of my favorite classic French desserts, just because it's nice and simple. So what I have here is a cast iron skillet. You can make these as large or as small as you'd like. I'm just gonna get my skillet warm. Like I said, there's really no set recipe for this. All we're doing is making some caramel. We're gonna put the apples in the caramel. We're gonna cook the apples a little bit, and then we're gonna top it with some pastry. The pastry, you have an option. You can make your own pâte brisée or pâte sucrée, which is just a basic pie crust. You can make your own puff pastry if you are really good. Or you can buy sheets of frozen puff pastry and cut them down to size. So that's something I've already done. It's waiting in the refrigerator. I measured my pan, and I want to make sure that I'm using a sheet of pastry that's the same size as my pan, plus about 1/4 of an inch. So I've already cut a circle, the diameter of my pan, giving myself a little extra space, and that you'll see later on how I handle. I'm going to start by melting my butter. I have 1 stick of butter here. I'm using enough butter and sugar just to coat the bottom of the pan and give yourself a nice amount of sauce, because when we invert this, that's the magic about this dessert, is you have this really incredible caramel sauce. It sort of comes along with it and sits on top of this pastry. I'm going to melt down this butter, and then I'm going to add, like I said, this was a stick. I'm going to add about a cup of butter. Actually, no, I'm not going to add a cup of butter. It was a stick of butter. I'm going to add a cup of sugar to it. So once your butter is almost melted, it's when you're going to introduce your sugar, and I'm using straight up white granulated sugar. While this is going on, you can start prepping your apples. If you see what I've already done here, I have a lot already peeled, cut in half, and cored, but I'll show you exactly how I did that. If you notice in my bowl, I also have some pieces of lemon. Because we're using apples, you know they oxidize very, very quickly as soon as they're exposed to air, and I don't want to start this dessert with brown apples, so I'm going to make sure they go into acidulated water, meaning I'm just squeezing lemons, and then I throw the chunk of lemon right on in the water, mix it all up, and give those apples a nice place to rest without turning brown. So peel your entire apple. I'm going to cut it in half, and then I have a little melon baller here. I'm just going to take out the top part around the stem, pop out the core, and go directly into your acidulated water. Acidulate is one of my favorite words, so I use it as often as I can here at the Culinary School. So we've got our butter melted down. I'm going to add my sugar now. And this was about a cup to about a stick of butter, which is a half a cup. So it's basically 2 to 1 butter to sugar. Vice versa, sorry. 2 to 1. I'm using 2 parts sugar, 1 part butter. What I want to focus on more than anything here is getting a nice amber color before I introduce the apples. I also have my oven waiting for me at about 425 degrees. It's a hot oven because I want to quickly cook the apples, and I want to quickly cook that piece of puff pastry that we're going to put on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this heat up. And I'm going to start cooking this just like you'd start any caramel, although caramels typically do not have butter incorporated at the beginning. It's just simply cooking the sugar with a little bit of water. In this case, we have butter. It's going to make this a little bit more decadent as having that extra fat from the butter. So while that's continuing to cook, I'll peel maybe one more apple, and I should have plenty. You have a lot of options here. Some people add a little bit of cinnamon into this mixture. Some people add a little bit of lemon juice into the mixture. I like to keep it as basic as I possibly can. Just because these apples are so good, I'd much rather showcase the apple and experience all that lovely flavor from the apple. And then later on, when you finish the dessert, maybe you can put a dollop of something like cinnamon whipped cream or some cinnamon ice cream on the top if you want to introduce a bit of a spice. Apples are classic for this dessert. However, it's not the only option. You could do pears, and we've got some really nice local pears coming our way right now. You could also do plums. You could do pineapple. Those are the common Tatin fruits that I see. I've even seen some savory tomato tart Tatins. So be creative here. Whatever fruit you have, give it a shot. You can really showcase some beautiful looking and tasting fruit with this simple dessert. I'm keeping my apples in half just because they're small apples. You could always break your apples down into quarters and you'd rearrange it a little bit differently in the pan. So you'd think about that when the time comes. It'd be a slightly different rearranging. There are pans that are called Tatin pans. I actually like to use my cast iron skillet for this, just because the skillet retains so much heat. Really make sure you get a nice, or will provide a very, very nice dark brown color for you. Cast iron is definitely the pan that I like to use for this dessert, simply because of that nice dark color that it can give us. I also think it accelerates the cooking process a bit because the pan itself gets so hot and holds so much heat. So when you put it in the oven, you already have a lot of heat going on. So I'm going to let this go maybe 2 more minutes. When I start to see it turning slightly amber in color, starting to go to caramel, I'm going to pull it off the heat and I'm going to arrange my apples